In the beginning here, when we have the tombstones, we wanted to give this foreshadowing of there's a much deeper theme that becomes unveiled over time. So in a classic Oddworld way, we wanted it to sort of be lighthearted on one hand and with comedic value. And the reason we do that is because the themes are actually so dark and dismal that if they're not lightened up, they could be taken too seriously. Then we show these desperate people who can't even, make ends meet any longer. And we designed them a little phallic looking too, so that they had again, a little bit of a, I can't take this too seriously quality. And the idea was to plant this theme in as a backdrop, and then we introduced the character of the hero, who's the stranger, and his plight with the outlaws and how he baits and traps these guys. And so from this point on, you'll be playing the game for many, many hours before you ever see that native culture that's in a desperate situation again. And we thought that was a nice way to sort of introduce something that's coming, then allow you to get into the game, start playing with some of the mechanics that are shown in this opening film, and then when it comes back to you in the game that you start to find these desperate people, the relationship to the stranger, and how all that unfolds, you'd be like, oh, those are the guys I saw in the beginning. Wait a minute, there's a larger theme unfolding here. We also wanted to get in all of the idea of how some of these live ammo approaches would work, and also Stranger's Lope, his high-speed run, and how he could use that to bait enemies into positions. So we used the spider in the opening movie, the spider bullet. We used the fuzzles as a trap, and we also show the idea of how you're bountying guys alive. And so part of the challenge, I think, is always at Oddworld, we're always trying to show not just the story to involve you in the gameplay, but to show you what's happening with mechanics that are in the game and try to make them more cinematic and interconnect that in the story so it's really highly designed and interwoven. And hopefully, if we do that successfully, then you have an idea of how to play, as well as feeling very informed about what the game's going to be about. And then you start off hopefully knowing more about the theme, the plot, the central character, as well as have some ideas as to how it plays. And I think that's always a challenge, but it's something we always try to do, and hopefully successfully. Here we are on the first Abe's Odyssey opening movie, and this was really the first thing people ever saw from Oddworld. What we were after was the sense of like third world laborers that were really just being completely absorbed by mega global corporations. And yet we wanted to do this with a sense of irony and humor. And these were some of the themes that inspired us. And what we wanted to do was even take the idea of these mega corporations and how they related to food and third world labor and things of this nature, and turn it into something digestible that was fun. And a lot of the influence for the designs, like if you look at this, the meat processing plant of Rupture Farms, we were after sort of an industrial revolution look, but also that felt menacing in the way that looking at nuclear silos feels menacing, that it felt like power plants.
That's me. My name is Abe. I was Employee of the Year.
Here we have Abe walking up to the advertisements of the products that they make. His race and his ancestry and his culture had a relationship to these creatures that was like the Native Americans and buffalo. And yet here, he's looking at paramite pies and going, you know, yum, and describing Rupture Farms as, this is Rupture Farms. And, you know, it was kind of depressed because we started this game at the end and made you unfold the story to find out how we got there. And then depending on how you got there, or got him there, altered his fate. And what he didn't realize was that there was a world outside of this factory. And to a lot of degree, that's how a lot of us feel today. You know, our lives are being absorbed by so much work. And it's, oddly enough, you know, at Oddworld, we just are working all the time, trying to bring experiences that are about how bizarre it is that our world has been consumed by work and we're not really living as much anymore.
It was us. I just had to escape. I just had to be free. And I didn't even know I had a destiny. I had just got past those slugs when the strangest thing I saw. A big moon was before me, and its face was my paw. Then I fell.
Now, one of my favorite artists was Picasso. In the beginning of Cubism, from his intent, was largely about recognizing how man was becoming less of an individual being and more of a gear in a wheel in a factory. It wasn't the guy out, you know, harvesting his crops anymore. It was just a guy pulling a lever over and over and over. And his faces of his characters became more structured and angled, and his landscapes became more geometric because he was saying the rolling hills were going away and the factories were replacing all this, and the basic shape of the landscape was becoming more cubic and angled. And so his characters did well because he was saying our people today are becoming more mechanized. They're becoming the machine. In a lot of ways, I feel similar about the world, and with all the conversations we would have at Oddworld about how we were going to approach the design, we wanted this feeling that these characters were cogs in that machine world, that were becoming mechanized.
My test was completed. I expected to rest. Then the big face revealed the intent of my quest. With two scars together on the back of each hand, they could shut down Rupture Farms and restore the lost land. With hand scars complete, the spirits took form. Now my chant had power. Rupture Farms should be warned. Yeah. I'd found the switch to kill most of the power. And there I was, in the final hour.
Now here we are with Munch's Odyssey. It's kind of devastating to me that we never manifest Munch in his full glory, which was he was a Jekyll and Hyde type of character. But beyond that, you know, game production is full of failures and lessons. And we were a little ambitious in what we tried to achieve, and as a result, we didn't achieve as much as we wanted. And what we wanted to do with Munch was we wanted to create this sensibility that we had a character who's the last of his kind. And we show a little flashback here where you see what happened to the rest of his kind, and now he's alone. And that sense of loneliness, we hoped, was something that made you more empathetic to who the character was and the condition that was coming. And much like Abe, he embodied a sense of naivety. And he's kind of, you know, the face only a mother could love. I mean, he's this bizarre-looking guy. And in the process of it, like in this ocean scene, the sense was desolation, emotional desolation. Like, how do we really, you know, middle of a huge lake like the Great Lakes, and no one around, and he's trying to find his own kind, and he's calling to them, and eventually he gets this huge, like, burst of energy because he gets a response that suggests he's not alone. There's another of his kind. And this was kind of the idea of like mass marketing, you know, in a consumer-driven society that's kind of leading you to your doom. And, you know, like cigarette ads or something. So Munch is hearing this response, and ultimately it's a trap. And it's a trap for gabbets. And Munch is a gabbet. And it was this idea of sort of reckless commercialism, reckless industry that is really looking out for itself and its shareholders, but nothing else. And so this was kind of inspired by the idea of animal rights and what's really going on. I mean, if people really knew what was going on with some of the subject matter in the real world, they'd just be appalled. So we live in a society that really is in denial. It can't face a lot of the realities of the darker side of what makes our lifestyles so convenient and comfortable, because if we knew, they're too disturbing. And part of what we wanted to do was show it from the perspective of the people at the bottom of the food chain.
Well, then what happened?
They took him away to Viker's labs.
Oh, Viker's labs? Poor little schmuck.
So you see, Stitch Lips, if you want to find your brothers, you've got to rescue Munch from Viker's labs.
Oh,
Yeah, but how?
I don't know. You got me.
Find the big well, and then...
Of course, the almighty Raisin has a condition where he falls asleep all the time. And Abe's usually, even though he's trying to do well, his peers are like,
You know, Abe, you know, you're just such a schmuck, man.
you know, so they're always dissing him in different ways. And, he's like, oh. And then we introduced the Vikers. And the Vikers sort of represented like Nazi scientists, you know, of which there are many in the world still today in different shapes and forms that really believe in the religion of science, and at the expense of anything else, fine, as long as they're able to further their patents and their copyrights and their wealth and their achievements. And they don't care who gets screwed over in the process. And we were kind of inspired by that theme to design these characters that were just really bizarre and out for their own interest and insensitive to other people's interests. So a lot of what we were trying to achieve at Oddworld was sort of create these characters that would be archetypes of a mind state, of sort of a spiritual mind state of different personalities that we find in the world. And we can say, well, that's the, you know, corporate backstabbing career climber. And we those of us that live in you know, corporate environments, we sort of understand what that means right away. What we try to do is take some of those personality traits that we find in this world and come up with these sort of bizarre designs that seem to be a distilled concoction of what that energy might look like if it were its own species. So we're really trying to take sort of archetypal personalities and behaviorisms and turn them into their own species, so that they distinguish like what their interests are, and you know, maybe create a world that's more highly reflective of our own in an ironic, satirical, funny way. And then if we can start playing off of those themes, then we thought that that would resonate deeper and maybe give deeper emotional connections to the characters, to our heroes.
Don't are in its head. But do you stop to think why I'm sticking sonar in its head?
Sonar?
Think of all those long nights. Us pulling critters out of cages.
And finding them takes ages. What's that got to do
Will
with...
you just shut up?
Soda and partner.
This is Necrom. Long ago, the Budakans brought their dead here. That was before the Gluckans started stealing our bones.
This is the beginning of his discovery of the world that once was, and a deeper understanding, and really the passage in the classic Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. This is his step into the other side. This is his step into the unknown that awakens something in him that has been dormant. And the idea for us is that we all have this awakening that can occur in us, and when it happens, we're changed forever. We never see the world quite the same. And we all know someone that in whatever way, shape, or form this has happened to, whether a pet died or they were in a horrible car accident. And I remember the story of George Lucas being in a horrible car accident, and it's what was the main catalyst for his pursuit of becoming a filmmaker to the degree that he did. So these events happen, and they happen in ordinary lives, and that's what was important to us, was Abe, who every time we show Abe, you know, we just wanted this schmuck guy who's looking at it like, I don't know what's going on, you know, and he's just trying to figure it out, you know. He's just kind of representing the naivety in all of us. And if we did that successfully, this little chump could become a hero. And even though he's kind of clueless, his heart is always in the right place. And that was the idea, that we create a character whose integrity at the core of their soul was unshakable. And even though they were naive, uneducated, and ignorant, it didn't mean that they couldn't be something great.
At first, the Gluckans gave their brew away. Oh, tasty. But once the Budakans started drinking it, they couldn't stop. Then those Gluckans told them that if they wanted to work, they could have all the brew they wanted.
Only if you got a job.
They fell for it.
Step right up. Oh, I love his job. Step right up.
So now, the weirdos want me to destroy the brewery, but I gotta save the Budakans there first.
Hey! That bastard Abe's here! I demand to know who is at fault here! You're not pinning this on me!
I'm telling you, it's that Abe guy. Sell, dump it, lose it, get rid of me. I work hard, I work hard.
Well, if it gets to the boiler!
The boiler?
The boiler?
What are we going to do?
The boiler!
What are we going to do?
Yeah.
Where's ground pants? I need some pants.
It's not fair! We had twice the flavor!
It became, for us, an icon of that idea of being the most of what you can be, even though you're in the worst possible position and you're the weakest guy in the weakest way. That even if that's who you are in this lot in life, stitched lips, you know, it's very strange looking, your friends against you, all these things, it doesn't mean you can't become something more. And to us, we felt like video games were a medium of expression waiting to become more like film or novels, where the stories took on a more interesting trait, not just to carry the gameplay, but because maybe there was more contemplative ideas in there that were inspiring. And ultimately, as storytellers and game designers, and as storytelling and game design continues to merge, maybe the content will become more and more inspiring. Not just that you're victorious, but that you're something more, that you learn something from it in a way that makes you feel empowered to take on your own risks in life. And in many ways, that's what Abe was all about.
But we knew there had to be more of us out there.
We're screwed.
And we were gonna find them.
We interrupt this program to bring you this special news bulletin. Rumor Control reports that Abe, the mastermind behind the destruction of RuptureFarms, is also behind the Soulstorm Brewery atrocity.
I hate that guy!
Stay tuned for more on this story as it develops. This message brought to you by...
Need a late night snack? Try barbed wire biscuit. A mouthful of mashed up mayhem.
What?
Blow stuff up and learn about science with Brainiac.
Is looking at women's breasts a workout?
Get sick and twisted with the Happy Tree Friends and Friends.
Where's that coming from?
And sample the best eye candy from Japan with Anime Unleashed and Cinematech Nocturnal Emissions. Taste the party. Barbed wire biscuit. Tonight at midnight.